Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another postgraduate live stream. This live stream is all about fees and funding, and to help me do that, I will be introducing one of our colleagues from DMU Student Finance in a second. In the meantime, I'm going to be your host. I'm Georgia, and I work as part of the Business and Law Marketing team. If you do have any questions, we're going to be here for the next half an hour, so please drop us a comment, let us know you're watching, just say hi. And as I say, if you do have any questions, now's your time to get them answered. So I have no knowledge of student finance, so we had to bring someone that was an expert on this field. So I'd like to introduce Darren, who is our assistant manager in the DMU student finance team. Hi, Darren. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Yes, absolute pleasure to speak to you all this morning. Hopefully, I'm going to bring you some clarity to a complicated area. But looking forward to helping you all out, answering any questions that you may have.
Perfect. So as we say, we're going to be here for the next 30 minutes or so. So if you do have any questions for Darren surrounding student finance for postgraduate courses, just drop us a comment and we will get started. So Darren, I think a place sort of like a good place to start off is just an introduction to the master's loan, what it is. Would you mind to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, as I said, it's a complicated area, and what we're going to talk about is the postgraduate master's loan for students who live in England ordinarily. So if you normally live in Wales, Northern Ireland or Scotland, then there are different arrangements for you. So we're specifically talking about students who would normally apply for their funding from Student Finance England. So the postgraduate master's loan is something that you can apply for a master's level course. So it has to be a master's level course. Can't be a postgrad diploma or a postgrad certificate if you're applying in England. You can get a loan of up to £11,000. I'm just going to glance at my screen over here. £11,222. That's the maximum loan that's available to you. It will be paid in instalments, 3 instalments per year. So depending on how long your course is, you get 3 instalments per year. Most cases, it's a full-time course, 1 year, 3 payments. If it's a part-time course of 2 years, you'll get 6 payments, 3 payments each year, and you'll get paid roughly half of the loan in each year. One of the key differences with the postgrad loan compared to undergraduate loan, if you've had an undergraduate loan recently, all the postgraduate loan gets paid directly to the student. So there is a difference there. So for undergraduates, you might have a tuition fee loan and a maintenance loan, tuition fee loan paid direct to the university. It doesn't happen with the postgrad loan. So all the money goes directly to the student, and it's for the student to make an arrangement with DMU to pay their tuition fees according to their particular course needs and financial situation. Fees will vary depending on what course you're doing. So so that's something that you need to think about when you're making your application for your funding. There are previous qualification rules. So if you already have a master's degree, then and that degree was awarded to you, then that will probably rule you out of receiving a master's loan again for another master's that you're doing again. And as I say, fees for these courses will vary depending on what type of course it is and what faculty it's in. So some of the art and design courses are reasonably small amounts of money. Some of the business and law courses, you're talking about MBAs and various other things, can be, well above £10,000 per year. So the fees vary. So that's another difference with the postgrad situation rather than undergraduate.
Thank you for the introduction, Darren. So just had a question from Demetrius. Thank you for your question. So he's based in Athens, Greece, and he's applied for a distance learning MSc in data analytics. He's looking to pay himself, and he was wondering if there are any discounts or scholarships. So what we'll do, we are going to go into like the VC's 2020 scholarship if you were a previous DMU student a little bit later on in the live stream. For the meantime, what we'll do is we will send you a link in the comments to our scholarships page, and you can have a look at those and see if you meet the criteria. Darren, have you got any other suggestions?
No, not really. With that one, yeah, the links that will be sent will give you an idea of what's available. Yeah.
So Demetrius, if you just keep an eye out for the comments, and we'll just pop a link to where all of our scholarships can be found, and you can have a look there. But thank you very much for watching, and thank you for your question. So Darren, with these, you have touched on it a little bit in the fact that some of these master's loans, they're only eligible for students that are based in England. What sort of other eligibility criteria do you have as a person?
Well, if we're talking about entry, I think where there's a key difference is whether students are coming this academic year, so they're hoping to start in end of this month or beginning of October, or if they're coming in 21-22, the following academic year, because there is a change in the regulations as a result of Brexit. I'm sure you may have heard of that. I don't know. But yeah, so there's some changes around EU eligibility for those years. So essentially, if you're an EU student, you'll be all right this year. If you want to come next year, the rules are changing. So yeah, the regulations, it's less. From the next academic year, it is less easy as an EU student to gain student funding. You need to have been resident in the UK. And can prove that for 3 years prior to your course starting. So there are changes. But the key eligibility is if you're living in England, you need to be studying in the UK with prior residency for 3 years prior to the start of the academic year. So that's 3 years prior to the 1st of September in the year that your course starts, if it starts in September or October. You can apply as a stateless person. So if you've got special dispensation as a refugee or asylum seeker, then you can apply as a stateless person. That's a new feature. You must be aged under 60 on the 1st of September as well, in the year that your course starts. Most people that obviously won't affect, but if you are a mature student returning, you need to be under 60 on the 1st of September. And you can't owe any money as well to student loans company. Now that's quite a difficult one to explain, because obviously if you've got an undergraduate loan for previous study, most people will kind of owe money to the student loans company. But what it actually means is you're not in any debt to them. So that means that they haven't asked you to repay an amount and you haven't done it, rather than the fact that if you're have got an undergraduate loan, you haven't reached the threshold to repay it or whatever. That's absolutely fine. If you've got loans with them and they're just, you've not been asked to repay anything, then that's absolutely fine. You can still get a master's loan. Where it becomes problematic is if they've asked you to say, well, you need to have paid £1,000 off that now because you're earning a certain level for your undergraduate loans, but you haven't paid it back. That could be a problem. But a very, very small number of students that would fall into that category. So most students are absolutely fine. If you've got an undergraduate loan, you can apply for a master's loan.
Thank you for that, Darren. So now obviously that's talking about the person, the sort of person. Is there any course eligibilities? I know you spoke about entry requirements. Are there some masters that may be exempt from these loans? I know you mentioned the PG diplomas and certificates. Is there anything else?
There is. And again, this is a key difference from undergraduate funding, where most courses are eligible for funding. Certainly all courses, undergraduate courses at DMU are eligible for funding in most cases, unless they're an apprenticeship or something like that. But with postgraduate, not all courses are eligible, and it's quite important to detail that before you make your application. So when you're making your application, it will ask these kind of questions of you anyway. But it's good to have an idea of what the regulations are before you start. So we've mentioned the course type. It has to be a master's level course. So some of our courses are PG postgraduate diplomas, PG dips, or PG certs, certificates. Those courses aren't eligible for students from England for a master's loan. It has to be the master's loan, and you have to enrol on a master's course. So you can't start on a PG postgraduate diploma and then complete that and then move on to a master's and then be eligible, you have to be aiming for a master's at the end of your course from the start. So you need to register as a master's student. You have to be doing 180 credits. So most, pretty much all master's courses are 180 credits in total. That's what you'll study in order to gain your master's award. The certificate and the diploma, 60 and 120 credits. So you can see where the difference is there. But you must be studying 180 credits. So we have a small number of courses in the business, certainly in the business school, I think, which are called top-up courses, which are kind of like just 60 credit courses, which you can do if you've already got a postgraduate diploma. You can do another 60 credits and then that bump your award up to a master's. That's not eligible because you're only doing 60 credits in this academic session. You have to be studying 180 credits. Where it is more flexible, has to be, or it can be full-time, part-time, distance learning. All those are covered, though. All those are eligible. You don't have to be attending directly to get your funding. So you can be on a distance learning course as long as it meets the other criteria. Absolutely fine. And those key criteria are around the course length. And this is where we have the most issues. If it's a full-time course over 1 or 2 years, absolutely fine. It's not a problem necessarily. Where we have issues is around part-time courses, which are don't have a fixed end. So some of the technology and some of the business and law part-time courses aren't eligible for funding because they don't have a fixed end date. So they allow you to complete your course in 2 to 6 years. So where those courses have got flexible ends, not eligible for student funding. Student Finance England aren't good with flexibility. They like firm dates that they can work with. So there are a small number of courses, part-time courses in tech, or chem rather, which is the computing and media faculty that do around engineering, computing, data, that sort of thing. Some of those part-time courses are not eligible for funding. And business and law, I think maybe some of the marketing courses and like that are also 2 to 6 years, don't have a fixed end date, which is good. It's a positive thing really in some ways because it allows you to structure your study according to your own life. You might have family commitments or whatever, working already, allows you to study alongside, but it won't be eligible for student funding because it has to be, if it's a part-time course, it has to be a fixed end date of 2 years if there is a 1 year full-time version. So I don't really want to get into that too much because we could talk about that for ages and ages because it is a complicated area, and we could sit and chat about it. And I can take you through all the regulations, all the way through, and we could spend ages on it. So we'll talk about other stuff as well. But if anybody's got any specific queries about particular courses, then they can ask a question, and I'll try and answer it. Ask it in the comments section, and I'll try and answer it.
No, that's perfect. We do actually have a question, and it's just a little bit of clarification on what we spoke about earlier. So just to confirm, when applying for an MA course, Student Finance England would pay straight to you, and you would have to pay the university yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, money comes to you. You'll get three payments. So if it's 11,200, it's approximately a third in each instalment, gets paid directly to the student. So all the money comes to you, and then you can use it as you see fit. Most students will obviously use it to pay their fees and some living expenses as well. But it is it's only meant to be a contribution to funding. So in most cases, it's not going to cover the entirety of a student's outlays. It's a contribution towards that. So the money is paid directly to the student, not to the university. So that's a key difference. Yeah.
Perfect. And we also just have another question from the same student. I just want to confirm, is the MA postgraduate loan any different to the undergraduate loan?
Yeah, there's lots of differences. Some of the ones I've already mentioned about it. So some of the courses aren't eligible. So course eligibility is different. Money gets paid to you, as we've just mentioned, rather than paid to the university. When we talk about repayments in a minute, there are differences between the repayment functions. So the threshold for repayments, which is the point at which your earnings will determine whether you start to repay or not, is lower for postgrad. So there are a number of differences, really. Yeah, it's something which is a fairly new product. I think it's only been going for about 4 or 5 years, and yeah, it changes slightly every year, but in the main, it's a reasonably straightforward thing to apply for. That's the other difference as well. It's not means tested as well. So if you're eligible and you apply for the loan, you can have up to the maximum. Student Finance England aren't really interested in what your household income is or what your partner or your parents might earn or whatever. There's none of that with this one. It's not a means tested thing. So the application process is fairly straightforward because of that. It's either or. Yes, you are eligible or aren't eligible, and it goes through normally in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll talk about that in a moment when I talk about applying. But it's a much easier to apply for than undergraduate funding as well.
Thank you so much. And we do have a question from the same student, and I think the student must have missed the start of this. So it's just a quick one. Do you get a maintenance loan? So I know you've covered this, but you just want to.
Yeah, no, you don't. So it's one loan. So effectively, it is a maintenance loan because it's paid to the student, but it's for the student to pay to make a private arrangement with the university to pay their fees. So none of the money comes direct to the university. It's all down to the student to make that arrangement to pay themselves.
Thank you so much. Hope that answers all your questions. If you do have any more, just pop them in the comments box and we'll get those answered for you. I think the next thing, obviously, we spoke about eligibility, a bit of an introduction to them. When talking about how you go to repay the loan, how do you do that?
Well, in some ways, this is similar to undergraduate loans as well, in that it will come from your salary. So if you're working, then if you reach the threshold for earnings, which is currently £21,000, then the money will be deducted directly from your salary by the company that you're working for. So that's the same as undergraduate. The threshold 21,000 is lower than undergraduate one. So undergraduate is around about 26,000 you need to be earning. For postgraduate, it's slightly less. They'll take 6% of any earnings over 21,000. So they're not taking 6% of 21,000 because that wouldn't leave you with much at all. It's 6% of whatever you're earning above 21,000. So if you're earning £25,000, they'll take 6% of £4,000, which is the difference between your earnings and the threshold, and then divide it by 12. And that gives you a rough idea of how much they're going to take from your wages. And the interest is still. Interest is charged, of course, because it's a loan, and the interest rate is 5.4% currently, and that will stay the same until the 31st of August. So there is interest applied from the moment that the first payment is issued to you. That's when the loan interest will start to accrue. It's not recorded on your credit score unless you go into default, so you owe the money and you haven't repaid it and it goes to collection or whatever. Very small number of students have that, but it doesn't affect your credit score if you want to get credit at a future date. The loan belongs to the student, so it's something that is in the student's name, not in parents' name or partners or anything like that. So it belongs to the student and will be attached to them. And any loan not repaid is written off after 30 years. So 30 years from the point you take the loan out. So that's when it will disappear if you haven't repaid it. And this whole repayment thing starts in the April after you either leave the course or you complete the course, because April being the start of the tax year. That's kind of how it works with these repayments. You obviously won't go into repayment unless you are earning above the threshold. If you're doing further study, you might want to do a doctorate or traveling or volunteering or anything like that, not in employment, no requirement to repay, but obviously all the time the interest is still being added.
Thank you for that, Darren. And I think obviously before we jump into our little Q&A, can you just tell us a bit more about how you would go about applying for student finance for the master's loan?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, it's quite straightforward. It's a relatively easy process. You only have to apply once. That's the difference as well to undergraduate, where you apply every single year of your course. If you're doing a postgrad course that lasts more than 1 year, you only have to apply once at the beginning in the first year of study, and no need to reapply. So it kind of, the next academic year, the application kind of just goes automatically. They just assume everything is the same, and you move on. You apply via there's a link I think we've got to show. Oh, there you go. It's on screen at the moment. So it shows you where to apply for. So you can apply. The application cycle opens every, it's around about, it was quite late this year because of everything that was going on. So it was around about June-ish that you can start to make your applications, and it'll be around about the same sort of time, maybe a little bit earlier next year. Probably mid-May at the earliest before you can make your application. Quite quick, as I mentioned, probably a couple of weeks is normally normal sort of length of time it takes. And Student Finance England, I think we've got some links as well to the helpline number as well if you need some advice and guidance from Student Loans Company. There we go, it's come up on the screen there. That's the telephone helpline that you can use. And also we have our own student finance team are also really helpful and knowledgeable and can help you with applications as well, which I think we also have links for as well. So yeah, it's a reasonably straightforward process, and a lot of the things we talked about eligibility will be within the application process. So it'll ask you what course you're doing, how many credits you're doing, etc., etc. And obviously your personal eligibility, where you've lived, etc., are all part of that process. But if it's straightforward and the information is all provided as whenever it's required, normally a couple of weeks to process.
Thank you so much, Darren. So yeah, as Darren mentioned, all of the links, so how to apply, the SFE helpline, and also the information where you can find out more information about how to get in touch with the SAS team will all be posted in the comments as well. We've got about almost 5 minutes left, so we've got a couple of questions. So we have a question from Timothy. So Timothy has asked, I have completed the online registration. Will we be contacted about paying the course fees?
Good question. I would imagine so. I don't actually know the answer directly to that one. It's something that you'd probably need to contact the DMU Finance and Income team for. So let me.
What we'll do, Timothy, is we'll get their email address for you, and we'll pop it in the comments as well, so you can contact them and ask them the question.
They can do. They work out a payment plan with you. Normally, it's three monthly three termly installments, or 7 monthly installments starting the first payment in November is the way that they do it normally. But they have all sort of different ways that you can set it up. So that's paid by card or direct debit or whatever suits you. But you can also talk to them if your student finance payment plan looks different to the way that DMU wants you to pay. Then you can just talk to the income team, and they can try and give you a more appropriate payment plan that suits your student finance payments instead. So some of the courses don't always fit with the way that the payment plans at DMU work, but they are very flexible, and they can discuss that with them.
Perfect. We have a question from Manpreet. Because your question's a little bit more complex, we're going to answer it in the chat for you and just point you in the right direction, because it might be better for you to speak to our admissions team. We've got a question from Chloe, and Chloe said, can you explain the Vice Chancellor Scholarship for 2021 admissions? There's a link for this one as well, which shows you in a bit more detail. But essentially, Vice Chancellor Scholarship is for recent DMU graduates, and it's a deduction from fees, postgraduate fees, which is normally very generous. It's normally, I think, if you've got a 2-1
from DMU and you've graduated in the last academic year, it's normally 50%. But have a look at the link on there, and it will give you more detail about how it works. But usually, it's if you qualify for it, really straightforward, 50% deduction off your tuition fees, which is that's really good, and will help. If you're getting a postgrad loan, it will help your money go a bit further.
Yeah.
But there are a small number of exemptions. Not all courses, I think, are eligible for it, but there is. If you look on the link on the website, it will give you the list of courses that are eligible and those that aren't. But it's good. It's a good scholarship, that one.
Yeah. Chloe, the link is in the comments as well. So if you want to find out a little bit more information, then please visit there. So as I say, I've got about 3 minutes left. So if you do have any questions, please get them in. But whilst we are waiting for some more questions from students, we are going to just go through some like frequently asked questions that we sometimes get. So one of the first questions is, do part-time students get the same amount of loan funding?
Do part-time students get the same amount of loan funding? Yeah, absolutely. The only difference is that it's paid to you. Obviously, if you're a part-time student and doing a 2-year version of a course, then you'll get paid over that 2-year period. So you'll get 3 installments in each year that you study, but the actual amount of money that you get is the same as any full-time student. So no difference in that at all. It's just the amounts that are paid to you over the course of your 2-year course.
Okay. So another question that we get, and again, it's things that we've covered, but it's nice to clarify on some of them. So, can I get a postgraduate master's loan if I already have a master's degree?
Yeah, the answer to that one is no. It's equivalent, what they call an equivalent level qualification, ELQ. That's what student finance will call it. So if you've already got a master's degree, then you can't get a postgraduate master's loan to fund another master's, which is yeah.
So another one, I'm just going through some of the ones that we may not have covered.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm an EU student. Will I be eligible for a postgraduate loan?
Yeah, so this is the one I mentioned earlier. It's about the whole Brexit thing and the change in the regulations around EU eligibility. So if you're wanting to study in 2021, so starting your course in this coming academic year, there's more chance. The regulations are there, so you can apply as long as you've lived in the EU or the EEA for the last 3 years and can prove that. Then eligibility is reasonably straightforward. If you're coming in 21, 22, then the regulations are changing and it is very complicated. Let me just have a quick look and see what it says. So if it won't affect you if you're an EEA, EU or Swiss national benefiting from citizens' rights under the EU withdrawal agreement, EEA, EFTA separation agreement, or Swiss citizens' rights agreement, respectively. So I said it was complicated. Those are if you are an EU student and you're living in the UK, you probably will have an understanding of what those regulations are. You need to be subject to those to still be able to qualify for student funding. And that's the same for undergraduate as well. And that's just a result of the changing relationship between the UK and the EU.
Perfect. I think that is all that we have time for today. So I'd like to say a massive thank you to Darren for joining us and answering all your questions. Thank you everybody that has been watching and asked questions. We really hope you found this useful. We have a postgraduate online chat that is currently ongoing and will be for the next half an hour. There will also be an online chat a little bit later on today between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. So if you do have any further questions, please join our postgraduate online chat at the link below. We will also pop that in the question. We'll also pop that in the comments for you to visit. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely day and we hope to see you soon. Bye.